Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast, hosted by myself, Greg Oram, and my fellow Forest fanatic from across the Atlantic. It's Richard Spray. Morning, Rich. How you doing, mate? You okay?
No, I'm doing good, man. I'm ready for this weekend. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. I know that kind of music is your thing over in Oklahoma.
Yes.
We'll keep them coming. As regulars will know, it's a different theme tune for Richard every time. Richard, we are welcoming into the hot seat today someone very special as we continue our The One With series. We're welcoming someone from the Nottingham Forest fan base who follows the team home and away and who regularly keeps us entertained and informed on Twitter with his pre and post-match video clips and reactions. So to find out more about that and his work in mental health and charity fundraising and other things as well, and also to help us preview the Brighton game at the Amex tomorrow, we're delighted to introduce Des Oldham. Des, it's great to have you with us. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you. I'm really looking forward to the podcast. Just saying there before we come on how much I like this kind of thing, getting to know other Forest fans and hearing about their experiences. So I'm looking forward to passing over some of mine.
Fantastic. Well, we always get started with finding as much out about you as we possibly can. So for those that don't know, tell us your own Forest story. You know, you're from Nottingham, clearly. How and why did you become a Forest fan?
So I've been a Forest fan now for the best part of 35 years. I don't look that old, I know. No, I do. When I was 8 years old, I grew up in a football family, and I got a couple of uncles who were trying to encourage me in different directions. The very first game I ever went to was at Notts County. Can't remember a thing about it. I was probably about 7 years of age. And then another uncle who was a massive Forest fan, him and my auntie, took me to the odd Forest game, just taking me along, doing my mum a favour, looking after me and getting me into it. And unfortunately, when I was 8, my dad passed away. And following that, what they did, I know now how it all panned out. I didn't realise at the time they kind of took me under their wing a little bit. My uncle was sort of taking on that role a little bit, and the following season I had a season ticket. So from 1989, I've had a season ticket watching Forest ever since. All the ups and downs, all the good and bad. And that's basically where it all started from. And I went with them for many years, week in, week out. They dropped me off at the old junior ed section, which is now where the players and the families and the dignitaries sit, just by the tunnel. I literally sat next to the tunnel. So I used to stick my hand out and tap all the players. I remember Teddy Sheringham used to always look out and slap my hand so hard when I was about 9 or 10, a year or two into having a season ticket. And of course, just sort of in sight all the time was Brian Clough, in those early days. So for the first couple of seasons in that junior ed section, I was there sort of looking at Brian Clough. And obviously it's poignant this week and relevant. I say to everybody that there's nobody ever filled that stadium like when Brian Clough was in it. It was such a surreal experience in being there. When he walked out that tunnel, it was like his whole presence filled the whole stadium. And I just remember sort of staring at him almost as a kid and his reactions and what he did and when he come back down the tunnel and what moods he was in. So that really stands out for me in those early days. And then once I got to a teenager, I started going with my mates, as we tend to do, and picking up 1 or 2 away games. And then as I've got older, just really sort of live and breathe it. I can afford obviously to do the home and away games and continue to have a season ticket, and it's just what I absolutely love. I absolutely sort of adore the football side of it. You know, I like to think of myself. I don't want to sound arrogant, but a bit of a football purist. You know, some of the nonsense that goes off these days with transfer deadline days and this and that and rumours. Not really bothered about that side of it to some degree, but it's all part and parcel of it. I just really, really enjoy the football side of it and all football in general, to be honest. I watch so much football on television, you know, and really enjoy that. So that's kind of the last 35 years in a nutshell, getting to the point now where we're back in the Premier League, seen us in the Premier League before, fortunate enough to have done that. You know, some really good sides, and I know when we come on to a team I've picked out later, there's some players from that. You know, so seen some really good sides, seen the League One days. You know, went to Yeovil and Chester and places like that. So yeah, it's been an interesting ride being a Forest fan over that time, but of course I wouldn't change it for the world.
You're in the same kind of generation, or just a bit younger, I think, than myself. So I completely resonates with me all those times in the Premier League in the past and going through the divisions and so on. And you know, we're very sorry to hear that you lost your dad at such a young age. I mean, that is difficult for anybody. But your uncles have stepped in, and it's their fault you're a Forest fan.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we're thrilled that happened in that respect, that you became a Forest fan. But you started with going to home matches. When did you start going away? Because you go away all the time, don't you? I mean, you're home and away week in, week out. So how long have you been on the road with them as well for?
So I started going away basically when I could afford to go, when I could. So when I started working, sort of 18, 19, one or two games before, when I was kind of when I was available to go, and I was like sort of trekked to it, you know, proper Nottingham there, trekked to it. Um, when somebody sort of paid for it for me, so I went to one or two. My uncles in the really early days took me to one or two games. I remember one of my very first games was Aston Villa away. We drew 1-1 and Franz Carr scored. So I went to one or two. I went to the cup finals in the early 90s, you know, all of those. And then it was sort of around the relegation time, really, where I started going away from the Premier League. And when I was at college and uni and working, and was able to sort of afford to go and do it. So I started going back in the first division, as it was, the Championship as it is today, enjoying games there. Been to one or two in that Premier League season, but kicked on from there really. And then over time, it's been a bit up and down through commitments, work and working shifts and different kind of things. But really, for the last sort of 5 6 years, you know, really been into it again and really on it. And of course, it's it started before what's happened now, but now it's kind of become unmissable itself, hasn't it? You know, the tickets are that sought after. You're not really allowed to miss one, but it's not because of that. I've been going for a long time, probably in the peak of it in the early 2000s, around 16 17 games, and that's just built up. And one or two seasons, like I say, where I've had to do shifts, I haven't. But over the last sort of 4 5 6 years, I've been to just about every game.
Amazing.
Yeah. So what about last week then? How was that? Being a longtime fan, knowing the history, understanding the rivalry with Liverpool, I can only fathom how you felt coming out of that and those you were with. So kind of describe that, just being a fan for as long as you have, what that was like for you.
Oh, it was incredible, because we all know when you've been a fan, and again, modern fans know some of the history. I'm not trying to sort of say I know more than anyone else, but when you've been a fan that long, it means so much, and there's lots of different facets to it. There's lots of history. You know, of course, the biggest thing and the most important thing is the going back to those European days, which was before my time still, and how we upset the apple cart somewhat. You know, Liverpool were a juggernaut, a force to be reckoned with, and we stopped them in their tracks for a couple of seasons. And I was told all the stories growing up of how we sort of got under their skin, and the 2-0 win in Europe that effectively knocked them out, and all those kind of things. And then there's just sort of been games and incidents since which make you think, I really want to get one over these, and make no bones about it. So to go there last week, it felt like some kind of awakening of Forest. It felt like a real special moment, and the tension in that ground after that goal went in was unbearable. But it was one of those things that I really wanted to tick off. I got no control over it whatsoever. Obviously, what happens on the football pitch, but it's ticked off the bucket list. And I said on my own sort of quick review after the game, it was worth the wait in the end. What a place to go and win a football match. I've seen us win some big football matches, and I've seen us been so close at times in big football matches, but that was an incredible experience, and one that I'll never forget. The excitement coming out the ground, and the confidence it's given everybody, the lift around the city, around the club. People believing now we can go and achieve a top 10 finish, and all those kind of things. And that's what the owner's looking for, isn't it? He's looking for us to sort of build ourselves up and want us to be thinking forward rather than looking over our shoulder all the time. So again, somebody who's quite pragmatic and not pessimistic, pragmatic, I like to say, realistic in where I think we might finish. My expectations have gone up a little bit, so we just got to rein that in a little bit and just be careful over the next few weeks.
Liverpool game was an amazing experience for every Forest fan, and our very own Danscape has come up with one of his regular stats that says that, in fact, that was Liverpool's record home attendance at Anfield last week. So clearly, Liverpool were clearly just here for the Forest. It was also a great moment for Nuno. He's won the Ultra Performance of the Week award. We talked in a previous episode about how and why Troy Deeney didn't put anyone in the Forest team in his team of the week, which was scandalous. Alan Shearer fixed that. But we hope that it's not just going to be a one-off, Des, and we hope that we can obviously carry that on tomorrow at Brighton. We'll talk more about Brighton later on. But you touched on something just then when you talked about your post-match reaction. And that's kind of one of the things that stood out for me when I started following you on Twitter, is you like to do before videos and after videos. And I think it's great. So tell us about how all that started.
Well, it was a bit bizarre, really. I had no intention of doing it. I appeared on other YouTube channels, other Forest content, and somebody got in touch and asked if I'd like to do it, and I'd got absolutely no experience in doing it. I didn't think I could do it. I still don't think I can do it particularly well. It was all supposed to be real and raw. I'm not putting myself down there. It was supposed to be a real fan, because somehow it was linked into some kind of betting stroke statistics website, all above board, nothing sinister in all that. But and they offered to pay me to do it, which I was absolutely gobsmacked at, and it wasn't a massive amount of money, but it was enough to cover my sort of home and away expenses. And doing it like it was a monthly fee, and it covered all that. So why wouldn't I? I love talking about Forest. I've always talked about it before the days of YouTube and content as it is today. Love really getting stuck into conversation, and then appeared on these channels. So I was asked to do it. Somebody put my name forward to do it, and it was something that I enjoyed doing. I was getting paid to go to Forest effectively, which seemed really bizarre. It was getting good views on the website it was being placed on. It was a website called Pitch Footy, and they had all sorts of fans from different clubs giving their opinions. And it was, like I say, it was just to give people an idea of what the real fan was thinking. So that kind of went on for a year, and it coincided with us in the Championship and that upturn in form. So again, I think my views were helped by that, and people getting behind it and enjoying it. And then for whatever reason, that company sort of ceased trading and did whatever. I didn't know who ran it, although, like I say, don't get me wrong, it was all above board. Somebody was paying me and I was doing it, and it was all fine. And I was informed that they weren't going to continue. And then I just enjoyed doing it. One or two people ask about it, and one thing that made me really keep doing it, a guy who was blind actually sent me a tweet, and said that he really enjoyed it, and it's a way of getting some sort of opinion straight after the game. And again, I thought, well, I can't stop then, can I? I've always said with anything I do, and I'll come on to other things later, if I can help one person, in any way, shape, or form, why wouldn't I? I'm not trying to change the world with this kind of thing, but I was helping this guy, and then I couldn't not do it. I wanted to do it. I enjoyed doing it. I know I'm not perfect at it. I forget my words. I get the score wrong sometimes. It's all heat of the moment, especially after the game. I'm doing throughout the game is making a mental note of what's happened. If Hudson Odoi shoots and it hits the crossbar, I'll try and remember that was in the 27th minute. I'm not making notes or anything like that. And then I try and sort of articulate it at the end of a game the best I can. Sometimes it's easier when I'm really excited because it just comes out. And with all the noise in the city ground, some of the mistakes get masked over. When we've got it can be really difficult to put it into words and to try and be pragmatic, to try not to complain too much. Don't always say the right thing. I remember after the Liverpool game last year, I took a bit of a beating on that one. That's fine. I put myself in that position. But what sort of people, they don't need to remember, but what I'd like people to sort of realise is, and they don't have to, like I say, is I put the camera in front of my face. I'm stupid enough and daft enough to do that immediately after a game and try and articulate what I've just seen. And what really pleases me is, because I do this is how much of a purist I like to think I am. One evening a week, I come back and put post-match from Radio Nottingham on and listen to all the guys. And what I really enjoy is when my opinions kind of line up a little bit with theirs. And it does happen quite often. And that makes me think, perhaps to some degree, I do know what I'm talking about, and like I say, I'm not saying I know it all or get it right every game, because I definitely don't. I was actually going to put something out on Twitter after that Liverpool game, after what I'd put saying, we're all really angry, bit of a disclaimer, I might have this wrong. I didn't, because I thought, I'm daft enough to put myself here, and somebody once told me, somebody I kind of respect, I bumped into a local journalist who says, if you're going to do it, don't worry about what gets said. So I just put it out there. I thought, it's my opinion. It's what I think. If people don't agree with it, they don't agree with it. And again, since I've sort of taken on that mantra of not letting it bother me in that sense, I just really love doing it now. Really enjoy what I'm doing. Like I say, nothing pre-written, just me in front of a camera. Sometimes it takes me one take, sometimes it takes me an hour and a half roaming around the city ground after the game or before the game. So it's just something I really enjoy. And thankfully, when we're doing well, it gets a really good response. Sometimes when we're not doing so well, I think people think it was my fault, but then that's the position we've already had this conversation that we put ourselves in, putting content out there. So yeah, it's just something that started from something and nothing, and it's just, I wouldn't say it's grown, because it is what it is, but it's something I enjoy doing, and hope one or two people enjoy as well, especially the said person who got in touch with me that day saying it works because they're blind.
That's amazing. Yeah. So what about the mental health component? Because I know we talked a little bit before we came on. I know for Greg and I, we've didn't even realize, I think, when we started this process, just as you said, like when you started the video process, how much good it could do. The joy of just talking about our club, talking about the highs and the lows, even when it's frustrating, when things don't go the way you want them to. The reality is you just love it, and you love engaging each other, and you love the sort of connectivity that you get from it. So how did you kind of get into the mental health space, and then, the charity runs, the marathons and things that you do? How did that all kind of come together?
Well, to be honest, and I've never been shy in admitting this, I was in a place a few years ago where life wasn't working for me. 7 or 8 years ago, a job and a relationship had sort of deteriorated, and I was just in a place that I wasn't comfortable with, and I kind of looked at my options really, and I didn't have many. Just a man of a certain age, which at times I kind of fight for in a mental health capacity, where we kind of get forgotten, and I I was looking in the mirror thinking, what can I do? And I was overweight. And my first thing was to lose a bit of weight and build a bit of confidence and sort of get. Somebody once said to me, they said, lose some weight, build your confidence, you'll get a job no problem, and you'll be absolutely flying. And that's what I kind of did, and that meant running, and running took me on this little bit of a journey of I fell in love with it. It really, my mental health has never been particularly bad myself because I can control it by knowing what the problem is. But the running really brings me back up when it does start deteriorating. We mentioned the content stuff, and when you get a bit of criticism, it's easy to take that criticism above all the compliments. So things like that, I kind of like just sort of know what to do to deal with it. Get out for a run or do something positive, and really sort of approach it in that way. So going back to what you said about how it started, I took on this running, and then with running, you tend to do events, you build yourself up to a certain distance and do events, and then with events, you might raise some money for charity. And I kind of fell in love with that side of it as well, doing positive things. I wouldn't say I'd not done positive things in the past, but that kind of gets addictive within itself, knowing you're making a difference without being silly and above your station. It's the first thing you can do to help yourself, really, is help others. When you've got no options and no choices, you can make the small gestures that help others. So for me, whilst I was training and losing weight and reaping in all those benefits, feeling much better about myself, got a new job, got a new relationship, started a running group, met my wife at the running group now, married now, and met my wife there. And then it's just been, in so many ways, the best journey I've ever been on. I like to sort of focus on the mental health side, because in the early days of that running group, one of the guys who really sort of embraced what I was doing, massive Forest fan he was as well, um, and he's known locally, Al Jamie. He really, really embraced the group and could see what I was trying to do in terms of the social aspect. So whilst it is a running group, I'm trying to make it a social thing where running doesn't overpower anything either. Just like I don't want Forest to overpower life and things like that. There's different facets that have to work for us all. And this guy really embraced it. And unfortunately, he was in a bad place himself, and he took his own life a few months in. And I've always tried from that to build a legacy through the group and through what I do in terms of approaching mental health. Like I say, I'm not sort of hiding from it. I believe my mental health has always been fine, apart from it's not when things have been conspiring against me. What I tend to do now is find a balance by doing things like going to Forest, running, doing the content. It all makes me happy, and you've got to do what makes you happy at the end of the day. And if somebody's out there to sort of put you down, you have to sort of pick up those mechanisms that work for you. And for me, that's doing more of what makes me happy, doing more running, doing more Forest, talking to guys like yourself, doing content and getting to meet people. And that's why I sort of put so much onto it, because I touched on there about how sometimes, and we spoke about, we're in a quite similar generation, and I'm not sort of saying we're the only ones affected, but men do often get forgotten, and the guy I mentioned before was probably a little bit lost in the system, and so many things that was happening to him at the time and recently happened to me when it happened. And I thought there's two ways to go here. You either take it forward and try and do something positive, or you could get yourself into that sort of real depression and bad way. And that was somewhere I definitely didn't want to go. So as much as I can encourage some of the positive things I do, and other people, I try not to preach. I get it. It's not for everyone. It's people's lives different, but it's all about doing what makes you happy at the end of the day, and whatever that is, whether it's Forest, cricket, YouTube, anything else, any other sort of thing anybody else does. You've just got to keep doing it and not worry too much what other people are saying, because as soon as you start enjoying it, people will feed off it, and really start buying into it as well.
We've spoken before on here many times about the importance of thinking about what you say to other people, especially online. And when you put yourself in front of the camera like we are today, and what like you do with your pre-match and post-match content, yeah, you are going to be possibly a target for the comments that can be quite hurtful. And so I say again to anyone listening and watching, just think about that. I think that it's getting better, and I'm not afraid to call out things that I see. But I also want to say to you, Des, I don't quite think you realise just how inspirational you are, and I say that with all genuineness, because just listening to what you said then in your story, it's really uplifting. And so for anybody that's, I mean, I'm assuming that your running club, as you call it, or your group is that based in Nottingham, in West Bridgford?
Yeah.
Can anyone get involved? What's the name? How can they find you?
Yeah, it's called Do Running. We actually meet on a Wednesday in the William Gunn. Do you know the pub by the City Ground?
I do.
So
That's where my cousin Mick goes before every game. I've been in there a few times myself. It's quite a good pub.
I know Mick. He knows me as well.
Oh, do
But
you know
yeah,
Mick?
we run from there on a Wednesday, and actually run from the Bubble and Bean Cafe on Pavilion Road on a Sunday at 9 a.m.
Right.
And what I always say about the running group, everybody's can come along. It's all free. Do you know? I'm quite willing to put my time out to do this. It's something I get so much from, and all I want to do is show people that you can get so much from running if you want to. I don't want to. There's lots of running clubs in every area. Do you know? And they gear these people to be athletes and competitive, and they're great. Don't get me wrong, if that's the way you want to go, because it's about doing what you want, go and join that kind of club. But what we're all about is the social side. After every run, the reason it's in the pub and the reason it's in the cafe on a Sunday morning is because it gives us an environment to come together. We chat about Forest on a Sunday morning most weeks, and then on a Wednesday what we've been up to in the week. And what I'm trying to do is create that comfortable environment. And again, like with everything, like we say about the content, there's people who sort of disagree with my idealisms on it, but again, I can only put myself out there for the people that want to benefit from it. And I do, and I've got lots of people who've used it and used the social environment and built getting into running to make their sort of existence that little bit better. So yeah, anybody's welcome to come. Based in and around Trent Bridge, I live literally 100, 200 yards from the city ground. I live just over the bridge, just in the meadows, and it's a fantastic place for me to live my life down by the river, running, forest. I love my cricket in the summer. I've got my running group. I run on a Sunday and a Wednesday, so it's just an inspirational place to be. So yeah, really enjoy that side of what I do, and do so much on the back of it. So whilst it is a running group, I encourage people to come along and walk, and just to get involved however they can, and if they can pick something up, that's brilliant. It's just about making those small changes bit by bit to get us to that slightly better place.
Mate, I tell you what, I say it again, inspirational. Anybody listening, anybody watching, if it sounds like something that you could enjoy, then get in touch with Des on Twitter at Des Oldham. I think his information about the running group or club and socials is there as well. And it sounds like everybody's welcome. And this is a pain in the backside because I live in London, and it's another thing that I would probably come and get involved in if I was up a bit closer. So if you don't get it said enough, then I want to say to you, thank you on behalf of everybody that you've helped. Thank you for what you're doing. All right, because it really matters. It really matters. And Richard and I are huge on the community that the Forest fans are. So absolutely brilliant work, Des. Thank you very much for everything you're doing. Right. Just thinking about the Liverpool game last week again, Des. There was a few players that stood out. Callum Hudson-Odoi, obviously. What a goal. And straight after the game, there was that little impish character, Ola Aina, with his phone. And we talked about him being at the heart of everything and how he is just, the master of mischief. And one thing that I think we all saw was this comment when Callum went back into the changing room, get that man 1,000 boiled eggs. And we were like, where has this boiled egg thing come from? So, of course, social media has taken over. And our friend Jimmy at Nottingham Forest, I put a comment out about everyone should get their lucky eggs out for Sunday in reference to the Cool Runnings film with the lucky egg. So, of course, on the screen, there's the cartoon or the tune that Jimmy come up with the chap from Cool Runnings and Ola Aina and the lucky egg. And then, of course, it evolved and we've got the Costco picture, which shows all the eggs with Callum Hudson-Odoi and Ola Aina. So it's kind of grown legs. And I think it was Sarah Thompson who would put out something on her Instagram, I think it was, about going to Costco and nicking all the eggs. And I even believe that Ola Aina referenced that in a BBC Nottingham episode with Colin Fray and so on. But the one thing that has really taken me by storm is this.
And he will boil 500 eggs, and he will boil 500 more, just to be that man who boils 1,000 eggs for Alex and the door.
There you go. Our good friend, the Garibaldi Bard, has been at it again. And our friends over at the Mist Rolling In pod, I think, were responsible for those lyrics. Probably Reese and the other lads as well. So credit due to, of course, the boys at Mist Rolling In and the Garibaldi Bard for coming up with what is, I think, another brilliant song for Ola Aina. And it looks like, Des, that he's hopefully going to get tied down to a 4-year contract. So what are your thoughts on Ola Aina and the influence that he's had at the club? And is a 4-year contract well deserved?
I think it is. I think he's a cracking player. On his day, he has his moments where his concentration goes and things like that. Last season, there was 1 or 2 moments where you wonder how it was going to go going forward, and I think that was reflected in the 1-year contract he initially got. He's actually started this season absolutely on fire. I think he's probably slightly better at right back than he is at left back, even though he's a very, very good left back. And it's obviously something Nuno was working on when he were looking at Moreno to get him back at right back. For as much as we love Nico and his endeavour and what he puts in and the fact he's been playing well himself. I think Ola Aina is first choice right back. So I think the way the team's starting to shape up, I think now, and I've been calling out for this for a while from the ownership, and when it comes to the transfer, is let's start tying up positions, 100%. So like if Ola Aina is the right back, let's get him in, that position sorted. We move on. Murillo and Milenkovic look pretty settled. If Moreno continues in the form he has, he'll look pretty settled in that position. And of course, then we've got the players higher up the pitch, like Morgan Gibbs-White, who are mainstays. And that's where I feel Forest have got to, is a point where we can actually start really strengthening the squad bit by bit now, rather than throwing the kitchen sink at it, as we've been reminded so many times, and we all know the reasons why that happened. I think people like Aina being in the form he is and showing what he is at the moment, and the way he defended last week especially, I think he really starts nailing down a position, and we can start getting confident in the fact that we can look at other areas of the pitch rather than worry. For my biggest problem last season with Forest and the season before was I always felt there was a nucleus of a good side, but the mistakes and the concentration wasn't there. It feels like they've come back this year, and Aina is a classic example of this. They're really, really focused. They're cutting out those mistakes. They're not giving the ball away as much in the midfield, which I think was creating a lot of pressure on us. Coming backwards, I think I'm not a massive one for stats. I don't think they tell the true picture, but the XG against shows that we're one of the lowest with shots against, and I think that's all because we're starting to do the basics right. And players like Aina, who are obviously full of talent and ability and pace and got the physique for the Premier League, are really starting to put all those good features into a complete player. And that's what we're seeing. So, yeah, really pleased with the way he's starting. If they feel they need to tie him down to a 4-year deal, You know, absolutely. I think he's a real asset to have, and he, as much pleasing as that this week is the way he's almost embraced himself into the club all of a sudden. Do you know, last week seems to be the catalyst of him becoming one of the stars, one of the players, rather than being on the periphery. Do you know, he's one of the players now, almost like Gibbs White and people like sort of Johnson has in the past, you know, who are what the club's about all of a sudden, and that's nice, isn't it? Because people are starting to sort of fall in love with Forest rather than just feel like they might be, and it has been the case, not with him, but they're on a bit of a gravy train with the club and getting out of it what they can. It feels like they're starting to really relate, and that connection's coming back because again, we all love Steve Cooper, and I know we've moved on since then, but the connection is just starting to coming back with the manager, with the players, and that's always a really special place to be. That's why people really enjoyed that Cooper period and can't forget about it so much, is because it was so special when everybody's on the same page in the club. This is what I've learned over the last 35 years, and it's not been very often. When everybody's on the same page, you go into a really special environment every week, you know, and even if you just go to the home games at the City Ground, and like I say, living here, it's a special occasion every single fortnight, you know, when everybody's singing from the same song sheet, so to speak. So yeah, loving the way they're embracing it. Hudson Odoi song, Einer's eggs, and all this kind of thing, and loving the fact that they're really starting to think forward. And I think a 4-year deal for someone like Einer at his age, who should be in his peak, or at least getting towards it, is definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah, completely agree with all that. It's interesting when we kind of looked at the beginning of the season and how things were being presented in the preseason. We wondered, all right, is this the part that we really needed to see with Nuno? He's finally getting an opportunity to really get to embrace his role and how he helps develop these guys and how he builds the culture and how he builds that cohesiveness. And I agree with you. I think you're seeing that. So just thinking about all of that, are there other players that have caught your eye? And what do you think's realistic for this season based off of what we've seen in terms of how the team is gelled, the kind of unity that seems to be there, the way that they're playing, and they're all sort of in lockstep, as it were, in terms of how they're performing on the pitch, as well as what kind of relationships they built off the pitch. So I'm just curious, like other guys that have caught your eye, and then potentially, what do you think the season will look like going forward?
Yeah, there's definitely players that have caught the eye. Obviously, we've had a decent start, so again, we'll have to take the rough with the smooth when it comes. But from what I've seen, and I think of occasions like the Southampton game where, to be honest, in the first 55 minutes, the defending was pretty easy. But what I saw in that game was really a really mature performance from Murillo. I know Milenkovic is getting all the shouts at the moment because he's new and we're all getting used to him. But I think Murillo's been really mature this season. Obviously, when players come over from Brazil, they're a bit raw. That's the way they're encouraged to be. You know, they run out of defence and they shoot from 55 yards, and because it's all about the flamboyancy. But what's happened now, I feel, with Nuno, and surely Nuno is the one who takes the credit ultimately, is he's had a season of working with a real coach, you know, with a proper a proper coach, someone who's been about the game, and you're seeing mature performances, if not spectacular. Murillo, for me, has really stood out in the way he's not done much wrong. You know, because for all his brilliance last season, there was a mistake there. His heading was a bit iffy at times, and these kind of things. And now I've been really impressed with him. And in the same way, you know, and I know it's getting more obvious as the weeks go on. Callum Hudson-Odoi, I've been really impressed with him even before last week, and one or two people said to me he's not done very much, but what he is doing now, he's making the right choices on the football pitch. He's not just whipping a crossing aimlessly. He's not just shooting where at every opportunity because he's got that little turn in him. He's waiting until exactly the right moment, you know, and he's doing the right thing. He barely gives the ball away, Callum Hudson-Odoi, if you watch him. You know, he's always finding a Forest player or making a run. And I think that he's really pleased me. Really impressed with Moreno. I was very vocal, not online, but sort of to people around me, that I'd seen him for Aston Villa and I wasn't keen. You know, I really felt that he was their weak link against us. We could get at him in the last couple of seasons. and he's been absolutely brilliant so far. Do you know, he's added a real attacking threat, and he marked Salah out of the game last week. Do you know, incredible the work they did. So yeah, really pleased with those three in terms of a maturity. I'm a massive fan of Gibbs White. You know, I still think everything sort of goes through him, and he makes his tick. Whatever. Again, people are a bit 50-50 with him at times. He could do more. Perhaps he could, but I feel plug in some of the gaps we have on the pitch. You know, especially the way the midfield looked last week. It allows him to be a bit further up the pitch. I always say about Gibbs White, when he can break into the box like he used to before he played for us, against us quite often, you know, he's a completely different player. And we've not seen enough of that at Forest because we've been on the back foot for so long. So just really enjoying that these players are now mature, from that building confidence, you know, to do the right thing. We had this sort of system going on with Murillo and the left back and the left winger last year, where it was tip tap, tip tap, tip tap, come back forward, you know, and it was a bit boring and mundane, and it wasn't really getting us anywhere at times. And I've realised this season it's not happening. You know, once that ball gets passed out to the fullback, there's a more purposeful passing to Gibbs White, or Hudson-Odoi's attacking his fullback. So we just look like a completely different proposition. And this is coming from someone who said we'd finish 17th, because I felt that we wouldn't sort of build on. Like I say, I've always felt we've had a good nucleus of a team and some real good attacking players, but I didn't think we was utilising them properly, and I felt we had a real problem in the midfield and linking the play up. So I felt we'd finish 16th because we'd still concede goals and concede chances. And now, from what I've seen, I'm really starting to think it's kind of going to be an all or nothing season. And when I say all, not completely all, I think we're going to be top 10, or we'll revert back to what I've just explained. I don't think there's any 12th, 13th, 14th in there, because I don't think the football lends itself just to being that little bit mundane. And especially the way Nuno set up last week. Yes, of course we were at Liverpool. Of course it was defensive. And it kind of took me back that he dropped Hudson-Odoi, because I felt he'd done well. He'd not dropped him in the end. It was a plan, you know, and he executed it. It was actually a master plan. I said that in my summary at the end. I felt he really won me over last week, Nuno, because again, last season I think Nuno's matured in the way he approaches games, because I felt he waited to see what the opposition was doing before we imposed ourselves on a game, and quite often we were 1-2-0 down and it was game over. Whereas this season, he's doing exactly what he has to do to get the result. You know, it's not always pretty. And last week, the first 60 minutes, we didn't create too much. But as the game wore on, at half time, I genuinely thought we ain't getting beat. And I'm not the most positive, whilst I'm not the most negative. Like I say, it's more pragmatism. But I genuinely believed to myself at half time last week that we weren't getting beat. I thought they've not got enough to break us down today. And I didn't think we'd change it as early as we did. I thought it might be 70-75 and we perhaps try and hold on for 0-0. I was adamant the score was going to be 0-0 in my own mind. And when he brought the subs on and we started attacking, it was like, wow, this is working. This is really he's really hit the nail on the head here and stumbled across something. So yeah, I just think there's real opportunity to push on this season. I think Nuno appreciates he's got a talented squad. You know, probably work them out. Probably work with one or two of the younger guys. You know, the reason we got Callum Hudson-Odoi and Anthony Elanga is because they're inconsistent. They've been they're talented, obviously. You know, there's been a big fuss about them at previous clubs and big clubs. The reason they come to Forest is because they've shown inconsistency at those clubs. What we're starting to see now, particularly with Hudson-Odoi, is that consistency. I think from the end of last season, when clubs were starting to be linked with him again, we're seeing real consistent performances week in, week out. And if you've got talented players who are playing consistently well, there's only one sort of outcome, isn't there? So I really feel at the moment, again, I'm tempering it with a bit of caution, but I really feel Forest can push up towards proper mid-table, not just a comfortable finish in 13th, 14th, 15th. I think we can be looking at maybe just maybe a top 10 finish.
Fantastic. So we agree. We think that the season has got so much potential in it. And yeah, Nuno definitely has turned a corner. We need to move ourselves forwards. We're just about 45 minutes in, and we've got a few more things we want to get through, including, of course, Des's own all-time Forest 11. So, Des, we're gonna whiz through this quickly because time is running short. I want to quickly read out for everybody watching and listening that Des has gone for Mark Crossley in goal. Left back Stuart Pearce, right back Brian Laws, centre back pairing of Colin Cooper and Des Walker. In the midfield, and this is again quite an attacking midfield perhaps, we've got Lars Bohinen, Steve Hodge, Roy Keane and Gibbs White. Yeah, the balance is a little bit off there. I kind of think maybe Keane's going to sit, although when he was at Forest, he wasn't at City. He was definitely the box-to-box player. And Colin Moore and Nigel Clough up top. So, Des, just briefly, because, again, we've got a few things to get through. This is your team. It doesn't have to be the best player in each position, but one or two players stand out there for me. I mean, Des Walker, why have you gone for him?
He was just brilliant, wasn't he? He was a proper defender. You know, he headed it, he kicked it. I get a bit frustrated in the modern day and age with people like telling me Rio Ferdinand was a world class defender. Not for me. You know, I want defenders to defend. You know, he had the pace to almost beat anybody and get to the ball. He headed it, he kicked it. And he's a club legend, isn't he? You know, somebody when I started watching football, I just thought, what a player. And when I didn't know what I feel I might know now, I just thought, what a player. And like I say, I look at these modern defenders and think they don't do what he used to do. They're not a patch. I got a bit of an issue with modern day football that it's not as good as it used to be. And people like Walker would walk into any team, any Forest team ever since in his prime. I look at sort of players who fans get a little bit excited about when they come in and think, you know, they're not as good as Steve Chettle, never mind Des Walker. And because these guys were consistently on top of their game season after season, you know, and of course Walker moved to Italy, didn't quite work out, got lots and lots of England caps, you know, at a time when it was a lot more difficult to get England caps. So really, that's why I would never not pick a Forest team without Des Walker.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I mean, Des Walker for me would be in my team as well. We'll just look at one. I mean, Gibbs White is in your team. He, you know, there's so many amazing players I think we've had over the years. So Gibbs White is in your team as well. Was that an easy choice for you?
I think the midfield was the hardest. There's people like Ian Woan and Steve Stone, and in the time I've been watching Forest, you know, Joe Lolly was another massive favourite of mine. But Gibbs White, for me, in this modern era, like I say, he's the talisman. He's the one who makes it all tick. If we're scoring goals, Gibbs White's normally at the centre of it, whether it's Chris Wood or Tyro. He builds a relationship. Brennan Johnson in the first season, they was all on the same page. And like I said, I think he gets some unnecessary stick. Yes, he makes his flicks, but that's what flair players do. And when you're in a good side, a lot more of them will come off and won't cost you so much. And I just think this guy's the real deal. We seen him play for England last week, and everyone was raving how long it had taken for a Forest player to play for England again. This guy's going to go places, whether it's with Forest or not. What I do like about him as well, he seems to be another one who's really bought in. He really likes the environment. Of course, his girlfriend's a big celebrity within herself, and they love the area, and you see what they're doing, you know, and his kid's been born here. So I don't think he's in a rush to leave, which is nice, but and I'd hope Forest do well enough to be able to for him to do whatever he needs to do with us. Between him, the hardest choice, and I ended up putting them both in, was between him and Lars Bohinen, because Lars Bohinen was my favourite Forest player as a kid. Do you know what a player he was? The goals he scored and the relationship with Stan Collymore up front was absolutely incredible. So Lars Bohinen, I was absolutely devastated. And again, going back to that point I made about Des Walker and how players aren't probably what they used to be. People have told me we've had decent players, and I know I can't just reminisce for reminiscing's sake, but when I start thinking of players we've had in the midfield who people rate and have cost us a lot of money, and I think of Lars Bowen, and I think they weren't a patch on him. You know, the impact he made and the ability he had with a football at his feet was incredible.
Yeah, no, I agree. I all these players again, you and I are of a similar kind of age. They all were fantastic for us. Oldham's Reds, a team that can go up against anyone's. I'm absolutely certain of that. Okay, it's time for this.
The lightning round!
Yes, sir. The lightning round, Des. So we're gonna run through these quickly because, like Greg said, we got very limited time. So let's just rattle through these really quick. So, what was your first Forest match live? I think you mentioned it, but go ahead and repeat it.
Yeah, it was at Aston Villa game when Francois scored. I remember my uncle phoned me up and I nearly hit the spikes, it seemed, on the old terrace. And I was nowhere near it. It just felt like that. Francois, and it was 1-1 at Villa Park.
Fantastic. What about favorite Forest player of all time? You kind of alluded to it, I think, a second ago, but maybe it's someone different than we're thinking.
I think in reality it's Stuart Pearce, because I think Stuart Pearce is everybody's favourite Forest player. There's those like Bowen and another one that I'll just quickly mention, I know you're in a rush, is Nigel Clough. So underrated and forgotten about. He's in my top 3 Forest players of all time, with Collymore in terms of actual ability. Maybe not my favourite, but what he could do on a football pitch. I compare him to Eden Hazard and say he didn't have the pace, but football was different then. He'd be worth 150 million, Nigel Clough, these days.
Isn't that remarkable? Didn't he have like 100? I think he had like 100 goals for us, something in that range. I mean, it was a lot of goals, surprisingly. Yeah, underrated, you're right. What about what player in Forest history would you like to see on the current squad?
Collymore.
Collymore
Collymore in this team would, because we've always been a counter-attacking team, even under Brian Clough right back then. And I pass him a neat, tidy footballing side, but that hit teams on the break. And in this team now, with the way I think it solidified itself, and I think a lot of us agree as fans, whilst the guys, Chris Wood's doing a good job. If we had Collymore on the end of some of the balls that Gibbs White could slot down the channels, I think we'd be winning games comfortably.
Absolutely. Your favorite away or third kit?
It's the one where Collymore scored at Old Trafford. The green and the blue one. I remember Clive Tilsley was a commentator and he says Forest had just broke the Bank of England because nobody had scored there for 9 months. Collymore scored, and I wasn't at the game, but I had Lars Bohinen on the back of that shirt as well. So that was my favourite.
Fantastic. What is your favourite Forest moment or memory?
I've got to say Wembley, haven't I? It's Wembley, the recent one, but it was a special day. That for me, being my age and some of those things I've spoken about, some of the deeper issues, it felt like almost the full coming of an adult generation. Because when we started slumping, I became an adult, and then it almost felt like a real moment. And in some ways, I believe our personalities mirror our football clubs. So that was it. One I will just shout out for, and I always used to say it used to be the best and worst game I'd ever been to. And hopefully this question will come up. I'm jumping the gun. But the Sheffield United in the playoff game when we got beat, I've never experienced a roller coaster of emotions and experience like that. That was incredible. But that was a different kind of thing. Wembley was just a special occasion. It was in 2022. I got married as well a few months later. My wife was there, lucky enough to get her a ticket. So it was just a fantastic year. The promotion, it was just the icing on the cake.
Amazing. Yeah, fantastic. If you weren't a Forest fan, what club would you support?
No, probably, and only because I live here, Notts County, because that's the way I was being enticed to. But I'm not sure I'd support them in the way I do. But then we'd all say that, wouldn't we? Probably
Sure.
Notts County. That my family was split, sort of not quite 50-50, but there was Notts County fans there. And if I'm honest, And today I've been tempted after this to nip over and watch the game. I get to watch them once or twice this season because I like watching football. If I go on holiday, I went to Clacton last season and managed to pick up an Ipswich game. So I just love going to watch football, and I watched on league football. But yeah, probably not. So I'm not bitter. I'm not like they lot.
All right. What about, apart from Cloughie or Cooper, who was your favorite Forest manager?
Uh, Good question. Probably Paul Hart. And I know Paul Hart did well, and he had all those connections. But I think it was the reason I say it is more the season he came in. We wasn't really expecting anything. I think they decimated the squad, and lots going on behind the scenes, and we wasn't expecting to do anything. He brought Jennison and Andy Reid and Gareth Williams. And all of a sudden, we looked like a proper team again and really pushed him close. Obviously, it all culminated in that day at Sheffield United, which gave me that experience. But I think the football heart he were getting us playing, and that feel good around what he was doing, and the kids. It's always good when there's players from your club, coming through. And again, it's about community and spirit and feeling, and that with those managers you mentioned, Clough, Cooper, Nuno's getting it a bit at the moment, and Harty, we had that connection, and I think that's a big thing of being a fan as well. In the way I try and support Forest.
Absolutely. If Forest could sign one player from a non-top six side, who would it be?
Oh, a non-top six side. Do we class Aston Villa as a non-top six side?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, for the sake of it, I really, really like Ollie Watkins at the moment. I think I know it's obvious and he's coming to the fore, but I was saying towards the end of last season, I sort of said to someone, if I was Arsenal, because they need to push on, when I was talking about something they was doing, I'd go and sign Watkins, and they sort of poo-pooed the idea. I said, no, this guy's the real deal. They need a number 9. And this guy, I compared him to Rashford, not in the same footballer, but I said, if Rashford had the same application as Ollie Watkins, he'd be one hell of a footballer. And Rashford at the time was getting in the England squad ahead of him. I think Ollie Watkins, is that player, again, not the same player, but Nigel Clough, getting on the end of things, chasing things down, working hard for the team, assisting, doing all those things. And I think in Forest's current team, Ollie Watkins would, again, just as I mentioned with Collymore, would be a real asset.
Absolutely. Yeah, you'll get no disagreement from Greg and I for sure about that. Absolutely. Who would you rather sell first, Murillo or Morgan Gibbs-White?
We've had this debate a lot, haven't we, over the summer? And unfortunately, I would, I'm a massive Morgan Gibbs-White fan already. It would definitely be Murillo because at the moment, I think this guy's going to be a superstar. I think I think if we sell him, we can replace him a little easier than Morgan Gibbs-White. I don't see how we replace what Morgan Gibbs-White brings to the team. Murillo, particularly last season, had that mistake in him. But I do absolutely love him and what he's about. I was actually lucky enough one day to be running down by the Trent, and he ran past me, and we had a picture. And
Nice.
and it was absolutely amazing. So I met him, and I was absolutely chuffed with that. I turned into a little fanboy for a moment and got a bit starstruck. But no, really, 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 really appreciate what they both bring. But for me, at the moment, I'd just go for Murillo.
Gotcha. All right, final question. First, win the Premier League, but are relegated into the Championship for the next 25 years. Would you take that?
I think after the last 25 years, I'd take anything. So, like I say, there's been some pretty dire days, and before Forest were relegated, they gave it a real good go. People don't realise how I think we was 8 points off Blackburn and Man United or something like that, and we had a couple of tricky spells in that season where we finished third. The last time we got promoted, we didn't win in November and in February. And everyone thought we was going to fall away, and we just kept coming again. Without those spells, we might have really pushed Blackburn and Man U, who fought it out to the last day. So it nearly happened, but I think so. I think I'd take it because I'll watch Forest anywhere, and it's part of my frustration these days at times. When you do get a bit of criticism for supporting in the way you choose to support. I think, well, we've been there, we've watched it. I'm not being arrogant when I say that. It's just I'll still be there. When it happens. Football goes in cycles. It turns itself upside down. Wherever we end up, I'll be supporting. So it's being a football fan and embracing the community in the area and being a fan for so long. It's about the experience as well. There was that thing about the city ground and the moving. I incorrectly put out I'd rather stay at the city ground and took a lot of stick for it from certain quarters. I get it. I get why people would want to move and why it would sort of develop the club. But again, when you've followed it for so long, it becomes an experience and something that is really ingrained in you and you enjoy. So yeah, when it's a bit more about the results, and it is a lot about the results, don't get me wrong, when it's that little bit more about the results in terms of the experience, the day, everything that comes with it. The city ground itself nowhere generates atmosphere like it. Anfield can't touch it, and even with all their record attendance and You'll Never Walk Alone, it doesn't touch it. So yeah, for me, I'll support Forest wherever they are. So if that means seeing us win the Premier League and the Champions League, I'll take it.
Brilliant. I think you're the first person who said yes on that, so well done.
I am so good at lightning rounds.
Okay, we're just on the hour mark. Thanks for that, Des. Absolutely brilliant. I love the way that you're really expanding into all kind of avenues with your answers, because you're obviously someone who thinks a lot about the club and a lot about what it takes to be a Forest fan. And I think it resonates with me and Richard and anyone watching and listening. Before we go into our next segment, if you're watching, you're going to see the nice cheese. If you're listening, just 25 seconds of music. So, yeah, of course, our good friend, the cheese trader in York, Stu Freestone, sponsors us here at Talking Reds. As I mentioned many, many times before, all the information is in the bio. You can get your 10% off every order when quoting Talking Reds. That's each and every time. Check it out. If you've got a function or you want to just get some cheese for the fridge, Stu Freestone, the cheese trader, is your man. Alrighty, so we've got time just about to think about tomorrow's game at Brighton. I'm fortunate enough to be going with Orlando, my son. Des, I know you'll be there, so hopefully we're going to try and bump into each other if we can. Let's have a quick think about that then. Richard, thoughts on team shape and selection for the match tomorrow at the Amex? What are you thinking?
Yeah, it's a tough decision for him, obviously, because he had success last week. You don't just want to sort of throw in the same lineup per se. I mean, I'm sure he's going to take it game by game, but what you saw was the opportunity to switch things up a little bit. And we've said, just from a personnel standpoint, there's just far more depth, far more options for Nuno at this point. I'm personally thinking that he's going to go with a similar lineup as he did against Liverpool, but I might see him potentially weave in an Alanga or a Callum Hudson-Odoi to kind of get some of that attacking flavor to it. It had the capacity to be counterattacking at moments throughout the match, but we clearly saw a shift once Elanga came on, once Callum Hudson-Odoi came on, around the 60th minute. I think Callum was on first, and then Elanga a little bit later. So I could see Elanga, especially considering, I think it was on Forest Focus, as was talking about their left back positions a bit of a weakness for them. So if you throw in someone like Elanga with that pace and that ability to kind of press that back line to stress them out a little bit with that, and will be interesting to see. Can he finish? That's always his challenge, right? But we know he can place a ball as he did for Callum last week. So I'm looking forward to seeing it be somewhat similar with that sort of restrictiveness that Yates can bring into the middle. The way Anderson's playing defensively as well as how he can attack, and then Elanga out on the right a little bit. So that's what I'm thinking is probably going to be the shape there. So, in place of Dominguez.
Yeah, I mean, I put the thing on the screen for those listening. We've got the foot mob on the screen. We're going to do it live again. It looks very, very flat at the moment with a back four and then a five across that midfield with Wood up top. So it looks like a 4-5-1. But of course, it's not going to stay like that. Yeah. And as you say, for this game, maybe with that left back area for Brighton being something we could target, Anthony Elanga could possibly start. So at the moment, looking like a 4-5-1. I mean, it could potentially be more of a 4-3-3, perhaps. Do we think? With maybe, obviously, get this right. Does that work like that? There we go. With Woods going into the middle. I mean, we know that Gibbs White doesn't stay on the right. We know Anderson's not on the left. But are we likely to see Ward-Prowse Des keep his place? Also, thoughts from Ryan Yates and his performance last week. I think he's a surefire starter. I mean, obviously, this is a very much an evolving kind of shape we might look at. Could you see it being something like that as well, Des?
I think Rich is not too far away with what he said. You know, my initial thoughts are, and I remember from last season, that we can get at the left back. You know, we can get down that side. We did create one or two bits last season and we were unlucky to lose. I don't think Nuno's going to change it too much from Liverpool. The one change would make sense to be Elanga, because I don't see Anderson losing his place either. I think he's been excellent since he came in. So I would sort of like to see Hudson-Odoi, but maybe he sticks Hudson-Odoi on the other side as well instead of Elanga, because I don't see Anderson filling that role that side. So I'd imagine him to go the same. You question about Ryan Yates. I thought he was brilliant. You know, he just really. It was interesting because I've always had an issue. Well, for a long time, I've had an issue with the number 6 role and is not filling it properly, and it really hurting us. I think with Ward-Prowse doing what he does, he doesn't have to second think anything. You know, when he gets the ball, it's gone quick. It's gone into Gibbs White. It's gone to the wingers. And what that allows Yates to do is just go and mess everything up in front of him. It's almost like he's pushing him out. Go and sort that out. You know, McAllister spent 45 minutes on his backside last week because Yates had just kicked him all over Anfield. But that's great against these type of teams, because I think Brighton are a good side. Let's not start sort of getting ahead of ourselves here. These are a really good side, and they've relied a lot on, like Liverpool, they've relied a lot on wing play, you know, and getting down those flanks. They've got some good sort of wide players, not as many. Obviously, Trossard left a while ago, but they've got some good wide players who are tricky and will make it uncomfortable. So I think you'll see the two fullbacks sort of defend deep, and we might actually see the same starting 11 from the outset and try and stifle them that way, and then build into the game from that. I felt last week what really worked was playing Anderson and Dominguez, whilst they wouldn't be the Dominguez in particular wouldn't strike you as a first teamer at the moment. I felt them playing in front of the fullbacks allowed the fullbacks to be fullbacks rather than the two attacking wing backs that they are potentially in their main role or at other times. So I felt it made Forest compact. You know, they was allowed to man mark the wingers, which then meant the two sort of, I called them inverted wingers, did a job on Liverpool's fullbacks who are renowned for overlapping. You know, and that meant all we had to really sort out then was the middle, where Ward-Prowse just sat and picked everything up, and Yates went chasing. Yates, I call him the retriever, in the sense that he's not that we know his limitations. We know what he does on the ball. He's the guy you want off the ball, making things messy, dirty. This is why every manager loves him. So I think in a game like this, away from home, Yates is definitely one to be utilised and make it a bit tricky in there. They've also got a bit of bite in their midfield at Brighton. You know, the guy last year who should have been sent off, you know, he tends to go around sort of smashing people a bit in the same way as Yates. So I think it'll be a good matchup. I don't see it being particularly entertaining, if I'm honest. You know, I think it might be a bit of a stalemate. It has been over the last couple of seasons. It's been a little bit of a stalemate with the odd goal or that kind of thing. So yeah, I see Forest going pretty much the same. I wouldn't be too disappointed. And again, just to be realistic, if we can take anything away from Brighton away, it's a massive step forward. I know we've done it in the past, but it's a massive step forward on the back of the results we've already had.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I absolutely think that going to Brighton, we I mean, I know it's such a silly thing to say. I mean, it could be anything because obviously, away from home, Brighton are strong. It could be our first defeat of the season. I don't think it will be, but obviously that is a very real possibility. I think it's more likely to be a draw, and I'd take a point right now if I'm honest with you, because I think following up the Liverpool victory with a point just solidifies that those two games away from home as being absolutely outstanding. And of course, if we can get the 3 points, then I was floating after last weekend. I think I'll be driving back in the car, having to kind of concentrate extra hard because I'll be absolutely buzzing. So I've been playing around with the team as you guys were talking, and what I've got showing at the moment for those listening is a back four of Moreno, Murillo, Milenkovic and Aina on the right, with maybe then the midfield looking like Yates sitting more so than anything else, with a Ward-Prowse, Gibbs-White and Anderson as a three, sort of keeping that quite solid. Woods and then Alanga maybe joining him as that kind of floating player. So, I think one thing that's certain is that the in and out of possession is going to look very different. The job that they've got to do is going to be something that they're working on in training, and I wouldn't be surprised if we did see the same 11 as well, like you, Des. I think Dominguez, everyone knows, he's my guy. I love Nico Dominguez. I think his work rate could be really valuable, but Brighton might be looking at that game last week and seeing what we did. And if we go into that again with the same formation, it's almost kind of giving the game plan away a little bit. And I don't know if Nuno's going to do that. So it really is quite difficult to kind of say what he's going to do. Would he go the same? Would he tweak it slightly with the winger? Because last season we didn't go with Alanga or Hudson-Odoi, and the away game at Brighton wasn't a good game at all. And I remember at that point, the Brighton were quite decimated with injuries. It was a really good time to play them. And from listening to Forest All Over, their commentators were talking about that game as well and how it was a good time to play Brighton. And Brighton really felt like they were going to be lucky to get away with a point in that game. And they got all three and we got nothing. So Nuno maybe would have learned from that and thought, maybe I need to think about my personnel. And he seems to have done that last week, of course, with the way he, as you say, Des, he didn't drop Callum Hudson-Odoi. He certainly had a game plan. So I wouldn't be surprised if we did see Hudson-Odoi and Alanga start, purely because they are going to be really powerful options for us. I wanted just to quickly add this to the stage as well, because I did promise Orlando, my son, that I would reference the team that he selected. So he's gone with the same back four, and his midfield three looks like Ward-Prowse, Yates and Anderson, with Chris Wood through the middle, Gibbs-White kind of more on the right, but still floating, and he would like to see Hudson-Odoi. And again, that could easily be the team, couldn't it, Rich? It could easily be that, because we are full of options at the moment, right?
Yeah, that's the beauty of, I think, what we're doing. When have we ever said, I mean, granted, we've only been back in the Premier League now, this is the third season, but when have we ever had a moment where we're going, wow, we're just excited to see what he's going to field, right? Like, what kind of lineup is he going to go with? Because that's the kind of variation that we can present, right? Because you're going to give, like you said, if you put the same 11 out, they're going to be prepared for that to a degree, because they're probably going to be assuming that that's probably what's going to happen, just based off of the fact that we had success with it last week. So if you throw in little wrinkles, right? You throw in a Callum on the left there, up at the front, doing what he does, or you put Alanga in on the right, it constantly gives Hertzler something to think about, right? And their squad something to think about. So, yeah, this is such an exciting time for us as a Forest fan, not only from the results we've had, but just what we can do with our team overall in terms of how we can set things up, the kinds of plans. I mean, there's just a lot of tools in the toolkit now for Nuno. And again, it just keeps illustrating the kind of effort that's been made by the recruiting team and the buy-in from the players as well. I think Des talked about that earlier, to them kind of getting into the motions with Nuno and getting kind of working cohesively together with the managers and the coaches. And yeah, it's exciting. I can't wait to see what he puts on the pitch. That's the most interesting thing. We're throwing all these different versions out there. Like Orlando's is great. It's beautifully structured, so it could happen. He could be right.
And I will say as well, when he's picking his team, I'll pick it back up again. He's not just just going, oh, I want that one, and that
Right.
one. He's nearly 8 years old, but what's great is he's talking to me. He's like, well, I think Hudson-Odoi has been really effective, and his trademark goal, he's got his first one already, so I feel like there's another one coming as well. So his reasoning behind his team is so great to listen to, and obviously I'm a proud dad, so I'm gonna mention that he's great. Brighton have got off to a great start as well. They are also unbeaten. They won away at Everton. They won at home to Manchester United. Then, of course, the draw away at Arsenal against 10-men Arsenal. Last time out, 0-0 at home to Ipswich. So, there's a team there that's sitting on the same points as us with a similar record. Brighton under De Zerbi, I thought, always seemed to look to go out on the out-and-out attack. And Hertzler, he too employs that kind of attacking and pressing tactic, but it feels like he's a little bit more relaxed about the slower build-up. I don't know an awful lot about him, but I have heard other people saying that he tends to almost play without a midfield. They go from a low block to all-out attack, so the transition goes from defence to attack without even the balls being played through the midfield too much. So it'd be really interesting to see how they play at home against Forest tomorrow. Quickly, before we have to finish off then, Des, give us a score prediction for the game at the Amex.
Do you know what? I'm going to go 1-0 Forest. I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's what I truly believe, but I think they're on a crest of a wave, and if they play as well as they did last week, I think they've got enough. You mentioned that point about midfield. I still firmly believe that the Premier League matches are won in midfield, and if we can dominate that, I think we win the game.
Richard, what about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with another clean sheet as well, but I'm gonna go 2-0, and I'm gonna say that Morgan gets a goal in this one. He gets pesky in the box, like Des mentioned. He was struggling last week, I think, to be effective. He did some good things off the ball, but on the ball he was struggling a little bit, and I think that was intentional by Liverpool's. That was their part of their plan, if you want to call it that. But anyway, I think he gets a goal, and then I think we get a late goal from Callum. He's going to have another magic moment. He's going to do what Callum does. He's going to come on late, probably in the 75th minute or 80th minute, and he's going to slot one in like he's been doing, because that's just what he does, and it's precision. It's magical to watch. So I think that's what's going to happen. 2-0.
Well, I'm going to go 1-0 as well. I think it's going to be a 1-0 win. I'm going to say Chris Wood to score, because I think Chris Wood, I've got a lot of love for him. I'll be honest with you. The turnaround for Chris Wood is complete, or has been complete for ages after last season. And we were at the Wolves match together when we saw him rise like a salmon at the back post, Richard, to head that goal against Wolves. And it was a magical moment. And I think he's due another goal. He's got off to a great start this season. So 1-0 to Forest, Chris Wood to score. So we are out of time. If you have enjoyed watching, and I hope you have, we hope that you'll consider liking and subscribing. It really helps us get the numbers up. Please do share and tell other people about us. We hope that you will come back and visit us again and see what other guests have got to say as well. We really enjoy our series, The One With, as you've seen with Des today, a chance to get into the fan base and to learn more about other people and the things that they're doing. And we always say that if anyone's listening or watching and you're desperate to come on, give us a shout. The door is open. There is a bit of a queue forming, I'll be honest with you, and we're grateful for that. But if you want to come on and be in the guest chair, then the door's open. That's what this podcast is all about. So, Richard Spray, thank you very much.
Thank you, Des. Pleasure. Enjoy the match at Brighton, both of you.
We'll do. Hopefully get to see
Bring
you,
us some
Greg.
good luck. Yeah.
Indeed. Des, thanks ever so much for joining us. The floor is yours to briefly finish. Anything you want to say?
No, I just really, really appreciate you guys having me on. And I said to you before I came on, it's nice to sort of, people see your face on the internet sometimes and think you might be this or that. Just a real fan trying to do good things for the people around me. I will just say, if you don't mind me, a quick plug. In a couple of weeks, I'm actually running coast to coast.
Wow.
I'm doing
Amazing.
192 miles from the west coast to the east coast at Robin Hood's Bay. I will actually be missing an away game, which I'm not happy about, the Chelsea game. which is very, very rare. But I'm doing 7 marathons in 7 days, and I've got just giving page. I'm doing it for a local charity called called Footprints, who do great work. I'm sure lots of Forest fans have seen what they do. So if anyone could get behind that and drop a few pennies on that, would be really, really amazing.
Well, fantastic. What we'll do is I'll get the link off you. I'll put the link in the bio for that. So Des going to be running 7 marathons in 7 days and also missing the away game at Chelsea as well. So that's dedication for you guys. And I think you said is it Footprints? I think that's the one Lisa Fox is the ambassador for. Is that right?
It is, yeah.
yeah.
It's a charity that work with children who've got like educational needs, you know.
Yeah.
And it's really special. I wasn't doing it for a charity, and then I went to see them, and me and my wife sort of fell in love with them after 10 minutes. So it's amazing the work they do. So if anyone can, we'd really, really appreciate it.
Well, a great way to finish off, Des. Thank you so much for that. I hope people will support you. As I say, I will get the link into the bio and share it on our Twitter page as well. Thank you so much for watching. We are 24 hours away from the game at Brighton. As we're speaking, I will quickly just say for anyone not interested, there is a Premier League fixture happening at the moment. It's currently West Ham 0, Chelsea 3. So Chelsea's away form seems to be continuing quite nicely. But this is a Forest podcast. Come on, you Reds. We'll see you soon.